Hi, my name is Sarah McDonald, and we are presenting to you the disaffiliation in relation to the characteristics and dispositions of evangelizing Catholic school teachers. I'm accompanied today by Scott Berger, Mark Martinez, and Regina Galassi, and we are very excited to be here to be presenting to you our research. So we recently conducted a study of disaffiliation as it relates to Catholic school teachers and evangelizing Catholic school teachers and their role and what their dispositions and characteristics would look like for that. We graduated from St. Louis University in May, and we did our study in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston. To access this presentation, you can scan the QR code and use it as a guide as we go through and talk through some of the talking points. The purpose of our study was to really get an idea of what our diocese was going through and how you can potentially use that as a tool to combat what you might be going through and looking at it in your archdiocese. So for this presentation, you will need a notebook and pen. So go ahead and take a couple of seconds, pause to grab those materials if you don't already have them, and then we'll go over the presentation overview. So we're going to start with the introduction and talking about the urgent and compelling problem that we're familiar with disaffiliation. Characteristics and dispositions, we'll take a look at what our research team found, and we'll share those with you, as well as a brief overview of the overall results and the recommendations we have for you and what your school would look like and what your archdiocese would be. So the first couple of things we're going to be talking through are the just urgent and compelling problem of disaffiliation. So as we go through these slides, we're going to be sharing some statistics, and Mark will talk about a reflection at the end. So I'll pause briefly between each one, but I want to go ahead and give you a heads up that just what resonates with you and what kind of surprises you about what you might be going through and reading. So the first one is the fastest growing religious demographic in the United States is the unaffiliated or the nuns. And this comes from the Pew Research from 2008. And they actually did a series of these researches over the course of a couple of years. So, but unaffiliated and nuns are the highest group in religious demographics. 74% of former Catholics say they stopped identifying as Catholics between the ages of 10 and 20, with a median age of 13. So this was a big statistic for us, and it kind of formed, I know for me personally, a very high awareness as we teach in the elementary and high school ages. 1 in 5 formerly Catholic teens and young adults reported attending a Catholic elementary school at some point, while 8% attended a Catholic high school. And this is coming from Going, Gone, St. Mary's Press. So regarding evangelization in Catholic schools, so Catholic schools, which always strive to join their work with education and the explicit proclamation of the gospel, are the most valuable resource in evangelization of culture. So this comes from Pope Francis's Joy of the Gospel or Evangelium Gaudium. As a visible manifestation of the faith they profess and the life witness of the supposed to manifest, it is important that lay Catholics who work in Catholic schools participate simply and actively in liturgical and sacramental life of the schools. Students will share in this life more readily when they have concrete examples, when they see the importance of that this life has for believers. And that comes from a 1982 document, Laying Catholic Schools. And some of our research will help support some of these statements as well.
So take a moment now and think about what, if anything, surprises you that may have been of interest about these statistics. What resonates with you the most? As we reviewed the research, we were able to identify the qualities, characteristics, and dispositions we believed constituted an evangelizing Catholic school teacher. Our study looked at the perceptions from 2 groups, teachers and administrators, to determine if there is any alignment among the 2.
To identify the characteristics and dispositions of an evangelizing educator, our team went through a meta-analysis of 11 key documents to identify what are those main characteristics and dispositions that we're seeing. And we pulled all of that information in a meta-analysis, and then we filtered that out using Co-workers in the Vineyard of the Lord as the basis for our filtering. And so Co-workers of the Vineyard of the Lord is a resource from the USCCB written in 2005 that is used to guide lay ecclesial ministry. And in Co-workers of the Vineyard, they talk about 4 key areas of formation: human, pastoral, intellectual, and spiritual. And so for our team's purposes, we felt it would be helpful to identify those characteristics and dispositions and then house those within those 4 categories to be in alignment with this church document.
So for now, though, pause and think of an evangelizing teacher that you have encountered. What characteristics and dispositions do you believe they possess?
So as our team identified the characteristics and dispositions, we wanted to share those with you. And so I'll briefly explain what we felt were some of the main characteristics and dispositions within each of the 4 categories. So within the human sphere, we definitely identified that an evangelizing teacher is someone who is joyful, who's hospitable, who is passionate about their Catholic faith. And much of that comes from the documents that we read, in particular, Pope Francis's Evangelizing document, in which he mentions that an evangelizer must never look like someone who has come back from a funeral. So definitely we want joy in our evangelizing teachers. In the pastoral sphere of formation and in those characteristics and dispositions for evangelizing educators, we definitely identified that good evangelizing teachers are those who can dialogue and authentically listen to their students, who really can practice the art of accompaniment, a term coined by Pope Francis in his encyclical Evangelizing Gaudium. And then those are teachers who kind of serve as witnesses or role models within the faith community. So Pope Francis mentions in Evangelizing Gaudium too that evangelizers must take on the smell of the sheep. So in a sense, like, our teachers are understanding and walking with their students and families and being real witnesses in the classroom for what it means to be a Christian, to be Catholic. So we continued to look at and identify, well, what are the intellectual characteristics and dispositions of an evangelizing educator? And so it was really important that the educator really knows the main tenets of the Catholic faith, in particular the kerygma. And the kerygma is the gospel message. And if the teacher doesn't know the gospel message, how can evangelization take place, right? So we felt that that was an important characteristic and disposition. Additionally, we felt that it was important that the teacher understood the process of evangelization. So what does a person go through when they are going through a conversion experience, when they are being evangelized to? And then also, what are those strategies and tools that we can use in the classroom to share the gospel message? And then as far as spiritual characteristics and dispositions, we really identified that an evangelizing educator is someone who has had a conversion experience, who's had that initial deep encounter with Jesus, and either in prayer or retreat or whatever that looks like. And that an evangelizing educator is someone who has an active and personal prayer life, where we see them at church, where we see them participating in the sacraments. Archbishop Miller comments on this in his document at, the five characteristics of Catholic school. If boys and girls are to experience the splendor of the church, the Christian example of teachers and others responsible for their formation is indispensable, and no effort should be spared in guaranteeing the presence of such witnesses in every Catholic school. So being a participant in the liturgical life is super important to an evangelizing educator.
So let's pause here. Can you think of teachers on your campus who embody these characteristics and dispositions? Take a moment to reflect on this. We have some ideas on this post-it you can take a look at and try on yourself.
So from the meta-analysis, we identified some characteristics and qualities that we surveyed administrators and faculty for their perceptions and those qualities in their school environment. From the data that we received, the conclusion we reached is that there are significant discrepancies between the perceptions of administrators and faculty. So while administrators see evangelization and mission-related goals as key priorities in Catholic schools, faculty respondents did not reflect that those qualities as accurately. With that said, both administrators and faculty expressed overwhelmingly positive perceptions of both their human and pastoral characteristics in themselves and among their colleagues. However, once the survey reached onto the intellectual and spiritual characteristic topics, there was a significant drop, both among administrators and faculty, regarding their feelings of efficacy and helping use that as an evangelization strategy. So from that, we concluded that while teachers certainly possess a zeal for evangelization, they have these human characteristics, they have these pastoral characteristics, they're less confident in the intellectual and spiritual requirements that are going to help them to apply those evangelization strategies in the classroom. So with regards to significant daylight or significant perception differences between administrators and faculty, two statements really stood out. The first statement that was given to both administrators and faculty was, "Catholic evangelization, the proclamation of the good news to those who do not yet know Jesus Christ, is central to the mission of my school." Administrator respondents overwhelmingly expressed a strongly agree or agree. They scored a 4.3. Faculty respondents, however, on the other hand, there was a significantly lower difference. And so that p-value, the statistical significance there, that represents the possibility that this is just a chance, the possibility that this is a statistical anomaly. So with 0.0001, this is overwhelmingly indicative that there's strong differences in perceptions between administrators and faculty. Likewise, when given the statement, "The formation of teachers in Catholic schools as evangelists, sharers of the good news, is central to the mission of my school," administrators and faculty expressed a similar difference. Administrators were much more willing and showed much stronger agreement with that statement, while faculty were less so. So finally, this is just a rough presentation of the data. So as you can see, looking at the human and pastoral graphs on the left, that the bar charts, which show what percentage of faculty and administrative respondents express a strongly or an agree response to certain statements, those were generally very high. This is especially in contrast to the spiritual and intellectual categories on the right, where you start to see the responses dip. Both administrators and faculty expressed were less likely to express strongly or agree in response to those statements.
So pausing here, what does this mean for your school context? Do you think the data would be similar on your campus? If so, why or why not? Did these data findings surprise you? And why do you think there's a discrepancy between faculty and administrators?
So throughout our presentation, we wanted to share with you what we found to be those top characteristics and dispositions for an evangelizing educator, as well as the data from our survey that we conducted in the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston, that perception data. And ultimately, the point of our presentation today is to maybe give you some food for thought and to encourage you in your own school context to find ways to prioritize evangelization so that we can really combat this problem that Sarah identified at the beginning of our presentation today of disaffiliation. So how can we keep our Catholic school students Catholic? So we have a couple of ideas for you in your school context. So first off, we think it might be valuable for you to consider surveying your faculty and staff. We created a survey instrument in which you could utilize. You can access our questions and access our data in our actual paper. And you can use that to kind of get an assessment on your faculty and staff and do a temperature check of how confident do your teachers feel they are in those 4 areas of human, pastoral, intellectual, and spiritual characteristics and dispositions. Additionally, we really recommend having a focus on intentionally discussing evangelization and mission between faculty and administrators on your campus. As Scott pointed out in our data, there seems to be a difference in perceptions of how important that is on a Catholic school's campus. And so perhaps there's room there to bridge that gap. We also really recommend creating a profile of an evangelizing Catholic educator. That could be some professional development or a retreat or some sort of activity that you guide your faculty through. And then having that document could be a great tool for you as a principal or for your admin staff, whoever's doing the hiring in your school, to utilize that profile when they're hiring others and also when they're onboarding new teachers. And we definitely recommend trying to focus on evangelization strategies in the classroom when you're planning your professional development for your Catholic school teachers. As Scott mentioned in the data, teachers feel less confident in their ability to share the gospel message in the classroom and in those evangelization strategies. They don't really know what those are. So maybe we could target that by focusing our professional development in that area. Other ideas could be also prioritizing evangelization of your families. And we know some schools in our archdiocese conduct faith and family nights, which bring together families onto campus into like a retreat-like experience. And that allows the Catholic school teachers to be witnesses to their families. And then we also recommend considering, if possible, dedicating a position or a campus team to focus on evangelization to keep this a priority on your campus. And then we know for some of you watching, you might be a little bit on a different level, right? So you might not be in a Catholic school classroom or school context, but maybe you're making bigger decisions. And so we've brainstormed some ideas for how we could apply this data and some suggestions. So on a larger scale, how can we evaluate current teacher faith formation programs? Would it be possible to survey the teachers who go through these teacher faith formation programs in our archdiocese by utilizing the instrument that we created from our survey to really, from our study, to really collect valuable information on how confident teachers feel in those characteristics, evangelizing characteristics and dispositions? Would it be possible to create a profile of an evangelizing Catholic school teacher for an archdiocese or on a national level that we could then use as a sample when hiring across the board? How nationally or within an archdiocese can we really cater our professional development to these evangelizing characteristics and dispositions? Could we form professional development uniquely around the human, pastoral, intellectual, and spiritual lenses? There are a lot of national evangelization resources, particularly for parishes, to revitalize them and to bring a life to the new evangelization. How can we utilize those same resources within our Catholic schools? And then lastly, on a national level, we discovered that there really are, we have the national benchmarks for our Catholic schools, but we don't have specific standards for lay formation of teachers in Catholic schools. We have lay ecclesial ministry in general. Within our parishes, there's national standards for parishes, but would it be possible to create similar national standards for the lay ecclesial minister in the Catholic school setting?
So, given all this information we've thrown at you, how can you prioritize evangelization in your leadership roles this year? What changes, if any, do you think you can make? If you're a principal, what ideas from our presentation would you put into practice? Or if you're a superintendent, very similar. And that wraps up our presentation. I do want to thank you for your time and your attention. Whoops. Oh no. Technology. I've listed all of our contact information here for you to look at and review if you wish. If you have any questions or need some clarification about anything we discussed in our presentation, please feel free to reach out to one of us. We'd be happy to interact with you or entertain a conversation fully with you if you desire. Again, thank you for your time. And also there is a QR code here following. This will give you access to a full copy of our dissertation. So again, thank you for your time and God bless you all.